Marcus Williams had $27 and a dying stranger's daughter depending on him. The bone marrow donation would save 7-year-old Sophia's life, but cost him everything: his jobs, his home, his future. As he signed the surgery papers, Marcus whispered, "Some things matter more than money." Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. Marcus Williams sat alone in his cramped apartment at 3 in the morning, carefully counting the few crumpled bills spread across the scratched wooden table. $27. That was everything he had left in the world. The electricity bill notice glowed yellow under the dim lamp, demanding payment within 48 hours or the power would be shut off. His 8-year-old son Tommy slept peacefully on the old couch nearby, wrapped in the faded blue blanket that Sarah had knitted during her pregnancy 8 years ago, before the car accident took her away and left Marcus to raise their son alone. The apartment was barely livable, with peeling paint on every wall, a leaky faucet that dripped constantly through the night, and windows so old that cold air whistled through the cracks even when they were closed. But it was home, and Marcus had worked 3 exhausting jobs just to afford this small sanctuary for himself and Tommy. During the day he hauled heavy materials at a construction site, earning barely above minimum wage with no benefits or job security. In the evenings he cleaned office buildings downtown, scrubbing floors and emptying trash bins while the city slept. On weekends he stocked shelves at a grocery store, organizing products and dealing with demanding customers who treated him like he was invisible. "Daddy, I'm hungry," Tommy whispered softly, opening his sleepy eyes that looked exactly like his mother's had. Those same gentle brown eyes that had first made Marcus fall in love, now staring at him from his son's innocent face. Marcus quickly swept the bills into a drawer and smiled warmly at his son, though his heart was breaking. "I'll make you breakfast, buddy. How about pancakes? The special kind your mama used to make?" Tommy's face lit up with pure childhood joy, the kind that made all of Marcus's struggles worthwhile. "Really, Daddy? With syrup and butter?" Marcus glanced toward the nearly empty kitchen cabinets, knowing he had only enough flour for one small meal, no butter, no syrup, not even milk to make the batter properly. The grocery money had gone to pay part of the rent last week, leaving them surviving on crackers and water for the past 3 days. But seeing his son's hopeful expression, watching the excitement dance in those beautiful brown eyes, Marcus nodded without hesitation. "Of course, chap. The best pancakes in the whole city, just like Mama used to make." As Marcus mixed the thin batter with tap water instead of milk, adding a tiny pinch of sugar he'd saved from a coffee shop, his hands trembled slightly from exhaustion and worry. He thought about Sarah constantly, especially during these quiet morning moments. She would have known exactly what to say to make Tommy laugh, would have found a way to make these meager pancakes taste like a feast through her love and creativity. She had been the heart of their little family, the one who made their tiny apartment feel like a palace with her warmth and laughter. Now it was just Marcus and Tommy, 2 people trying their best to survive in a world that seemed designed to crush people like them. Every day was a battle against poverty, loneliness, and the constant fear that he might not be enough for his son. Every night, Marcus lay awake calculating bills, stretching every dollar, wondering how long they could keep going like this. The old telephone rang sharply while Tommy ate his plain pancakes, making happy eating sounds and praising his father's cooking to make him smile. Marcus almost ignored the call, knowing that phone calls usually brought bad news, overdue notices, angry landlords, bill collectors who spoke in cold, mechanical voices about money he simply didn't have. "Mr. Williams? This is Dr. Elena Chen from City Hospital. We have your test results from the Bone Marrow Registry database." Marcus had completely forgotten about signing up for the donor list 6 months ago. He'd seen a colorful poster at the free medical clinic during Tommy's annual checkup, showing pictures of children who needed help. The registration process had been simple, just a quick cheek swab and some paperwork. He'd thought maybe, somehow, he could help someone the way he wished someone could help him and Tommy. "You're a perfect match for a 7-year-old girl with acute lymphoblastic leukemia," Dr. Chen continued, her voice professional but tinged with urgency. "Mr. Williams, I need you to understand something. This child has exhausted all other treatment options. Her body is rejecting chemotherapy, radiation isn't working, and experimental drugs have failed. Without a bone marrow transplant from you, she has perhaps 2 weeks left to live. Maybe less." Marcus felt his entire world stop spinning. Somewhere in this city, there was another father sitting beside his daughter's hospital bed, holding her small hand, watching her fade away bit by bit. Another parent was experiencing the same terror that Marcus lived with every day, the fear of losing the most precious thing in his life. "What would I need to do?" Marcus asked quietly, his voice steady despite the storm of emotions churning in his chest. The procedure would be tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. sharp. I must warn you, Mr. Williams, this is major surgery. We'll need to extract bone marrow from your hip using long needles and specialized equipment. The pain is significant, often described as excruciating. Recovery typically takes 5 to 7 days of complete bed rest, followed by several weeks of limited mobility. Do you have family members or friends who can care for your son during this period? Someone who can help you while you recover? Marcus looked across the room at Tommy, who was now drawing pictures with broken crayons on the back of an old envelope, humming softly to himself the way Sarah used to hum while she worked. Marcus had no family left alive. His parents had died in a house fire when he was 19. Sarah's parents had moved to another state after her funeral, unable to bear the pain of seeing Tommy and being reminded of their lost daughter. His few friends from work were struggling with their own problems, their own families to feed and bills to pay. Missing even one day of work meant no money for rent or food. Missing a full week could mean eviction, homelessness, losing the only stable thing Tommy had left in his young life. The mathematics were brutal and unforgiving. But somewhere in a sterile hospital room, a 7-year-old girl was dying. Her father was probably reading her bedtime stories, promising her that everything would be okay, telling beautiful lies because love sometimes requires deception. Her mother was probably sleeping in an uncomfortable chair beside the bed, holding her daughter's hand even in sleep, afraid to let go for even a moment. "I'll be there," Marcus said firmly, surprising himself with the strength in his voice. Across the city, in the pediatric intensive care unit of City Hospital, Elena Rodriguez sat beside her daughter Sophia's bed, gently stroking the child's forehead. Sophia had once been vibrant and energetic, with long black hair that cascaded down her back like silk, and eyes that sparkled with mischief and joy. Now, after 8 months of aggressive treatment, she looked like a fragile doll, her head covered with colorful scarves to hide the baldness caused by chemotherapy. The transformation had been heartbreaking to witness. Sophia's once plump cheeks were now hollow, her skin pale and almost translucent. The bright, curious child who used to dance around their apartment, asking endless questions about everything she saw, now could barely keep her eyes open for more than a few minutes at a time. "Mama, will the angels come for me tonight?" Sophia whispered, her voice so weak it was barely audible above the constant beeping and humming of the medical equipment surrounding her bed. Elena's heart shattered a little more with each word. "No, mi amor. The angels aren't ready for you yet. You're going to stay here with Mama for a very long time." But Elena knew the brutal truth that she couldn't share with her daughter. Dr. Chen had been honest with her yesterday, explaining in gentle but clear terms that Sophia's body was shutting down. The leukemia had spread aggressively, and traditional treatments were no longer effective. Without a miracle, she had days, not weeks. Elena was fighting this battle completely alone. Sophia's father, Roberto, had abandoned them 6 months ago, claiming he couldn't watch his daughter die. He'd simply packed his belongings one morning while Sophia slept and left a note saying he was sorry but couldn't handle the pain anymore. His departure had been devastating, but Elena discovered she was stronger than she'd ever imagined possible. She worked as a night custodian at a large office complex, earning just enough to pay for their small apartment and basic necessities. Every penny of her savings, everything of value she'd ever owned, had been sold to pay medical bills. Her grandmother's wedding ring, her car, even Sophia's baby furniture. All gone to fund treatments that ultimately hadn't worked. "Mrs. Rodriguez?" Dr. Chin appeared in the doorway with an expression Elena hadn't seen in months. Genuine hope mixed with cautious optimism. "I have news. We found a bone marrow donor." Elena's hands flew to her mouth as tears immediately began streaming down her face. "Are you certain? Please tell me you're certain." 10 out of 10 markers match perfectly. This is as close to a miracle as we get in medicine. The donor is a local man, a single father who volunteered through our registry program. He's coming in tomorrow morning for the extraction procedure. If everything goes according to plan, Sophia could receive the transplant by tomorrow afternoon. Elena collapsed to her knees beside Sophia's bed, sobbing with relief and overwhelming gratitude. For the first time in months, she felt something other than despair and fear. "Did you hear that, baby? Someone is going to help you get better. A stranger is going to save your life." Sophia managed a weak smile, the first genuine expression of happiness Elena had seen from her in weeks. "Will I be able to meet them, Mama? I want to say thank you properly." Dr. Chen's expression grew apologetic. "The donor has requested complete anonymity. Hospital policy protects both donors and recipients by maintaining privacy. Some people prefer to help quietly without recognition or thanks. Elena didn't care about names or faces or formal gratitude. Someone, somewhere in this vast city, was willing to undergo surgery and endure pain to save her daughter's life. That act of selfless love was more beautiful than anything she could have imagined. The following morning arrived gray and cold, with frost covering the windows of Marcus's apartment. He woke before dawn and spent several precious minutes just watching Tommy sleep, memorizing the peaceful expression on his son's face. There was always a possibility that something could go wrong during surgery, and Marcus wanted to carry this image with him. Tommy safe, warm, and dreaming of better days. Mrs. Patterson, their elderly neighbor who lived alone with 3 cats and a small social security check, had agreed to watch Tommy for what Marcus told her was a job interview at a new construction company. The lie felt necessary. He couldn't burden this kind woman with the truth about where he was really going and why. At the hospital, Marcus completed seemingly endless paperwork with hands that shook slightly from nervousness. Medical forms, consent documents, insurance papers that he couldn't really afford to process. The doctors explained the procedure in detail, showing him anatomical diagrams and describing exactly how they would extract bone marrow from his hip bone using long, thick needles. "Mr. Williams," Dr. Chin said seriously, studying his face with professional concern, "I want to make absolutely certain you understand what you're agreeing to do. This is major surgery with significant risks. The pain during recovery is often severe, lasting for days or sometimes weeks. Once we begin the extraction process, there's no way to stop or reverse the procedure. Are you completely sure about this decision?" Marcus thought about Tommy sleeping peacefully at home, about Sophia fighting for her life just floors below them, about all the parents in the world who would do anything to save their children. "I'm sure, doctor. That little girl needs this more than I need to avoid some pain." The surgery lasted nearly 5 hours, longer than anticipated due to complications with the extraction. Marcus lay on the operating table while medical professionals drilled into his hip bone with specialized equipment, drawing out precious bone marrow that would become someone else's second chance at life. Even with powerful anesthesia, the pain was unlike anything he'd ever experienced, radiating through his entire body like electrical storms. During those same hours, Sophia was prepared for her transplant in another part of the hospital. Elena sat in the family waiting area, surrounded by other parents whose children were fighting various battles against disease and injury. She prayed to every saint she could remember, made bargains with God, and promised to dedicate her life to helping others if her daughter could just have the chance to grow up. When Marcus's surgery finally ended, he was moved to a recovery room where the full impact of what he'd endured began to register. Every movement sent lightning bolts of agony through his hip and down his leg. Simple actions like breathing deeply or shifting position became monumental challenges that required tremendous willpower to endure. But despite the pain, Marcus smiled when Dr. Chin told him the extraction had been successful and Sophia's transplant was proceeding smoothly. Somewhere in this building, a 7-year-old girl was receiving the gift of life because he had chosen to say yes when asked to help. 3 days later, when Marcus attempted to return to work, his body betrayed him completely. The construction site foreman, Joe Martinez, took one look at Marcus trying to lift materials and shook his head with frustration. "Williams, you look terrible. You can barely stand up straight, let alone handle heavy equipment safely. Go home and don't come back until you're completely recovered. I can't have injured workers on my site creating liability problems." Marcus understood the implications immediately. No work meant no pay and he'd already missed 3 days. His rent was due in exactly 1 week, and he had $27 in total assets. The situation at his evening cleaning job proved even worse. The supervisor, a harsh woman named Carol who had never shown sympathy for anyone's personal problems, listened to his explanation with obvious annoyance. "I don't care about your medical issues, Williams. You missed 3 consecutive nights without proper notice. We have contracts to fulfill and deadlines to meet. You're terminated immediately. Clean out your supply locker and leave." Marcus felt his carefully constructed life collapsing around him like a house of cards in a hurricane. With only his weekend grocery store job remaining, earning $8 per hour for 12 hours weekly, he couldn't possibly cover rent, utilities, and food for Tommy. But every time the physical pain intensified, every time he wanted to scream from the agony radiating through his hip, he forced himself to remember Sophia. Somewhere, hopefully, she was getting stronger because of his choice. Mrs. Patterson appeared at his door that evening carrying a covered casserole dish that smelled like heaven. "Marcus, dear, Tommy mentioned you've been unwell and having trouble with work. I made far too much beef stew for one person. Would you and Tommy like to share dinner with me? Marcus's pride wanted to refuse charity, especially from an elderly woman surviving on a fixed income, but Tommy hadn't eaten a proper meal in 4 days. Thank you, Mrs. Patterson. I'll repay your kindness somehow. She waved dismissively. Nonsense. Neighbors help neighbors. That's how communities survive and thrive together. That night, as Marcus and Tommy shared the couch under Sarah's old blanket, his son asked perceptive questions that demonstrated wisdom beyond his years. Daddy, you helped someone recently, didn't you? Someone who really needed help. Marcus was startled by Tommy's intuition. What makes you think that? Because you have the same expression Mama used to get after helping people. Happy but tired, proud but worried. And you keep touching your side like it hurts, but you smile when you think I'm not watching. Marcus hugged his son tighter, amazed by the emotional intelligence that children often possess naturally. 2 weeks later, Marcus's worst fears materialized when a process server in an expensive suit knocked on their door during Tommy's school hours. Marcus Williams? I'm here regarding your rental property. You're currently 4 weeks behind on payments, totaling $1,600 including late fees. The landlord requires full payment within 48 hours, or eviction proceedings will begin immediately. Marcus had anticipated this moment but remained devastated by its arrival. Please, I can pay half now and arrange a payment plan for the remainder. I just need more time to recover and find stable work. The man consulted his clipboard without sympathy. Sorry, Mr. Williams. Property owner's decision is final. Pay in full by Thursday morning or the sheriff's department will remove you and your belongings. After the man left, Marcus sat at his kitchen table and calculated his options. He possessed exactly $27. Even selling everything they owned, furniture, television, Tommy's toys, Sarah's few remaining personal items, wouldn't generate enough money to prevent eviction. When Tommy returned from school that afternoon with a drawing he'd made of their family, he discovered his father carefully packing their meager belongings into cardboard boxes salvaged from behind the grocery store. Are we moving somewhere new, Daddy? Marcus couldn't meet his son's eyes. How could he explain that they were about to become homeless? That they might have to sleep in their car or worse in a shelter where families were separated and children weren't safe? We might need to stay somewhere different for a while, buddy. Tommy nodded bravely, already reaching for his backpack to select which toys mattered most. Marcus watched his 8-year-old son making impossible decisions and felt like he'd failed as a father. But then he remembered Sophia and the memory gave him strength. Somewhere, a little girl was alive because of his sacrifice. Maybe she was playing again, laughing with her mother, eating solid food, making plans for her future. Maybe his choice had given her decades of life, love, and happiness. The next morning, while loading boxes into his battered car, Marcus was approached by a well-dressed woman with kind eyes and an anxious expression. Excuse me, are you Marcus Williams? Marcus paused, holding a box of Tommy's clothes. Yes, who's asking? My name is Elena Rodriguez. I desperately need to speak with you. The name sounded familiar, but Marcus couldn't immediately place it. I know I'm violating hospital policy by being here, Elena continued nervously. Donor anonymity is supposed to be absolute. But I begged Dr. Chin for information. I told her I needed to find you, that it was a matter of life and death. Finally, she told me your first name and mentioned you were a single father in this neighborhood. Suddenly, Marcus understood. You're Sophia's mother. Yes. Elena's eyes filled with tears. You saved my daughter's life. Sophia is recovering beautifully. Her hair is growing back, she's gaining weight, her energy is returning. She asks about you constantly, calls you her guardian angel. Marcus felt embarrassed by such praise. Any decent person would have done the same thing. Elena shook her head emphatically. No, they wouldn't. Do you understand how many people are registered as potential donors but refuse when they're actually called? Do you know how many agree initially but change their minds when they learn about the pain and recovery time? Elena looked around at the eviction notice taped to his door, the boxes loaded in his car, the obvious signs of their desperate situation. This happened because you saved Sophia, didn't it? You lost work, lost income. Before Marcus could respond, Tommy emerged from the apartment rubbing sleep from his eyes. Daddy, are we homeless now? Elena gasped, covering her mouth in shock. Oh my God. You sacrificed everything for a child you'd never met. Marcus attempted to minimize the situation. We'll be fine. I'm just glad your daughter is healthy. But Elena was already calling Dr. Chin, explaining the situation with increasing emotional intensity. Within hours, the story had spread throughout the hospital staff. A nurse mentioned it to her husband, who worked for a local television station. A reporter looking for positive news during a particularly difficult news cycle decided to investigate. The story exploded across local media within days. Single father becomes homeless after saving dying child, became the headline that captured the community's attention and imagination. Social media amplified the story exponentially. Local radio stations discussed it during morning shows. National news outlets picked it up as a human interest story. People couldn't comprehend how someone would sacrifice so much for a complete stranger, or how the system could fail someone so catastrophically. Marcus found himself thrust into unwanted spotlight. Reporters appeared at the motel where he and Tommy were staying. His phone rang constantly with interview requests. Strangers recognized him on the street and either praised him as a hero or criticized him for being financially irresponsible. "I never wanted fame," Marcus told Elena during one of her visits. "I just want Tommy to feel secure and safe." Elena understood the burden of public attention, but she had developed an idea. What if we could channel this attention toward helping other people in similar situations? Before Marcus could respond, Tommy burst into their motel room with excitement. "Daddy, there are people outside with envelopes. They want to give us money." Looking through the window, Marcus saw dozens of community members holding donations, handmade signs reading, "Thank you, Marcus," and "Heroes live among us." Elena smiled through her tears. "Your story touched people's hearts. They want to participate in something beautiful and meaningful." 3 months later, Marcus found himself involved in something he'd never anticipated. Robert Sterling, a wealthy businessman whose own daughter had received a life-saving transplant years earlier, had initiated a lawsuit against the hospital system. "Current donor policies are fundamentally flawed," Sterling's attorney argued in court. "They prevent recipient families from expressing gratitude and fail to protect donors who make extraordinary sacrifices." Marcus hadn't wanted legal involvement, but Sterling convinced him that his case could establish precedents protecting future donors. "Your situation could prevent other families from facing similar hardships," Sterling explained. "No one should have to choose between saving a life and maintaining basic housing." The courtroom was packed with media representatives, medical professionals, and community members who had followed Marcus's story. Elena and Sophia sat prominently in the front row. Sophia looked completely healthy now, her dark hair grown back in beautiful curls, her eyes bright with recovered vitality. During the proceedings, the judge made an unexpected decision to address Sophia directly. "Young lady, do you understand why we're here today?" Sophia nodded solemnly. "The man who gave me his bone marrow lost his home because he was busy saving my life instead of working. How does that make you feel?" Sophia's response was clear and confident. "It makes me very sad. He gave me everything, but the grown-ups didn't take care of him. That's not fair to heroes." The judge looked at Marcus with deep respect. "Mr. Williams, in 4 decades of legal practice, I've encountered many cases. But I've never witnessed anything quite like this." The courtroom fell completely silent. "You asked for nothing, expected nothing, and gave everything. The court awards you $50,000 in compensatory damages and strongly recommends that all medical institutions establish comprehensive donor support programs." Applause filled the courtroom, but the most significant surprise awaited outside. Sterling approached Marcus with several prominent community leaders. "We want to establish the Marcus Williams Foundation for Donor Support. We'd like you to direct it with full salary and benefits." Elena and Sophia joined the group. "We want to volunteer every weekend," Sophia announced. "I want to help other kids whose heroes need help too." 1 year later, the foundation had assisted over 300 donors facing financial difficulties. Marcus worked from a professional office with dedicated staff members. Tommy attended an excellent school where he excelled academically and made lasting friendships. The foundation's impact extended far beyond individual cases. Similar programs were established in hospitals nationwide. Legislation was proposed to protect donors from financial hardship. Medical schools began teaching about donor support as part of comprehensive patient care. But the most meaningful moment came when Dr. Chen called about Maria Santos, a single mother needing to donate bone marrow to save her 4-year-old son. "The foundation will cover everything," Marcus assured Maria. "Lost wages, childcare, medical expenses. You focus on saving your son. We'll handle the rest." Maria wept with relief. "How can I ever repay this kindness?" "You already have," Marcus replied. "You're willing to sacrifice for a child. That's payment enough." That evening, Marcus reflected on their journey while helping Tommy with homework. Tommy, now 10 years old, had grown into a compassionate, intelligent boy who volunteered at the foundation regularly. "Daddy, do you ever regret helping Sophia?" Marcus considered the question carefully. "Tommy, that decision changed everything about our lives. Yes, we faced terrible hardships. Yes, I was frightened. But look at what happened. Sophia is alive and thriving. We help families avoid the struggles we experienced. And you learned that doing the right thing is always worth temporary sacrifice." Tommy nodded thoughtfully. "When I'm older, I want to help people too." "You already do, son. Every single day." 5 years after the initial surgery, Marcus stood in the same hospital where everything began. But today he was there for the dedication of the Marcus Williams Donor Support Center, a comprehensive facility providing financial assistance, counseling, medical advocacy, and legal support for bone marrow donors nationwide. Sophia, now 12 and completely healthy, joined Marcus and Elena for the ribbon-cutting ceremony. Hundreds of donors, recipients, and their families attended, representing lives saved and hardships prevented through the foundation's work. This center exists because one man proved that love for a stranger's child equals love for your own family, Elena addressed the crowd. Marcus Williams demonstrated that heroism isn't about fearlessness, it's about choosing compassion despite fear. Marcus surveyed the assembled crowd, recognizing faces that represented hope, healing, and second chances. Maria Santos stood nearby with her healthy son. Dozens of other families whose lives had been touched by the foundation surrounded them. Tommy, now 15, worked as a volunteer coordinator, inspiring other teenagers to participate in community service. Most importantly, Marcus saw evidence that when people face choices between personal comfort and others' desperate needs, they often choose kindness. After the ceremony, Sophia presented Marcus with her annual letter, a tradition she'd maintained since her recovery. "This is my 5th anniversary letter," she explained. "I want you to read it now." The letter read, "Dear Mr. Marcus, today marks 5 years since you saved my life. I'm 12 now and I love science, soccer, and helping other kids through the foundation. I know you think what you did was normal, but it wasn't. You gave up your home and jobs for a girl you'd never met. Because of you, I celebrated birthdays, made friends, learned to play piano, and dreamed about becoming a doctor. But you didn't just save me. You saved Mama from losing her only child, saved Tommy by showing him what real love looks like, and saved hundreds of families through the foundation. You started with one sick girl but ended up changing the world. That's what real heroes do. They start small but create endless ripples of goodness. I love you like a second father, Mr. Marcus. Thank you for the greatest gift anyone could give, life itself. Forever grateful, Sophia." Marcus wiped away tears as Elena placed her hand on his shoulder. "You know what's most beautiful about this story?" "What's that?" "Sophia isn't the only child alive today because of your choice. Every family the foundation has helped, every donor who didn't have to choose between saving a life and keeping their home, that's your lasting legacy. Hundreds of children are living because you were brave enough to help one little girl." Marcus looked around the center bearing his name, thinking about donors who would never face homelessness for saving lives, families who would never choose between generosity and survival. Tommy joined them, now a confident teenager with his father's compassionate heart. "Dad, I'm proud of you." Marcus embraced his son. "I'm proud of you too. You're becoming an extraordinary young man." "I learned from the best teacher," Tommy replied. As evening light streamed through the hospital windows, Marcus realized that small acts of kindness create enormous changes. He had simply said yes when asked to help a dying child. That single word had initiated a cascade of love, generosity, and hope that continued expanding every day. Sophia was right, he had given her life. But she had given him something equally precious, understanding that no act of love, regardless of its difficulty, is ever wasted. By helping one dying child, Marcus had discovered that the greatest gifts aren't what you receive, they're what you're willing to give. That gift had transformed hundreds of lives and would continue transforming them for generations to come.